This is a typical exercise from the level B2. It's the use of English, and it's part one where you have the multiple choice questions at the bottom, and your job is to select the appropriate and the correct option to fit in the article on the left. It's very interesting. It's level B2. Remember, level C1 and level C2 have the same structures in the Cambridge exams, but the vocabulary and the options might be more difficult. So that's the big difference between the B2, the C1 and the C2. The vocabulary will probably be different and the options will be very, very similar. That's really the difference. But this exercise is level B2, and hopefully you will be able to understand the task and you will be able to select the correct answer. So you can see on the left is the article. The topic is related to memory, and you have 3 paragraphs. And on the right, you can see the options from 1 to 8, and you need to select the correct vocabulary between A, B, C, and D. Number 0, we are given the number 0 in relation to an example. So A is the correct answer for number 0, but number 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way to 8, it's necessary to select the correct opportunity. So maybe now you want to press pause and you want to look at the vocabulary and you want to try this exercise yourself. And I will try to explain the vocabulary and to explain the tips to try to show you the explanation for the reason for each answer. Okay, so you can see the vocabulary on the right: familiar, aware, informed, acquainted, view, suggestion, belief, idea, base, depend, do, make, contains, involves, includes, consists, action, division, set, stage, seated, stocked, stored, cited, level, amount, extent, number, exact, single, one, isolated. So not too difficult, not too bad in relation to vocabulary. I hope you understand most of it. Again, take the time now to try to look for the vocabulary and to look for the explanation. And on the left, I will begin with the explanation of the text. So memory is at the heart, is the first option, at the heart of everything we do. And I'm going to show you the key here. So that's the expression, very, very famous expression, at the heart of. So for example, this family is at the heart of the community. This person is at the heart of the family. The significance is at the center, at the core, and it's a really, really good expression we can use in lots of situations. So the best answer there is definitely heart. In relation to bottom, it is possible at the bottom. You can see at the, but for example, the ship is at the bottom of the ocean. The stones or the floor is at the bottom of the ocean. So it is possible at the bottom, but in this context, it does not make sense because it's at the heart, which means at the core, at the center. Focus is not really typical at the, so it doesn't really fit, and key is not really typical to fit in this situation as well. So memory is at the heart of our sense of personal identity. If we did not have memory, so this is the conditional, if we did not have memory, we would not be, and the preposition here is key of, and this is the real secret that we need to try and identify. So the preposition of is really, really the big key. And if we look at the options, view of, suggestion of, belief of, apologies. So it's familiar of, aware of, informed of, or acquainted of. And the really, really typical structure is aware of. I am not aware of the weather. I am not aware of the problem. I am not aware of the situation. It's really, really common. Aware of. Conscious of is a synonym as well. To be conscious of, to be aware of. But conscious is not an option here. So the only possibility that's correct is aware of, okay? Familiar is typical with the preposition with. You are familiar with the weather. You are familiar with this person. You are familiar with this exercise. So typically familiar has the preposition with. The same with acquainted. It's in relation to make a friend, or just before a friend, when you meet the person for the first time, you are acquainted with this person. It means you have been introduced to this person, or somebody presented you to this person. You are acquainted with this person. So it's very, very typical, the preposition with. Informed is very typical, the preposition about. I am informed about the situation. I am not informed about your news. So informed of or informed about. It is possible informed of in other situations, but in this sentence, it does not make sense in relation to the relationship. So be aware of our relationships with other people. Remember, other is typical for the plural. Another is singular. Another day, another week, another year, but other for plural. Other people, other days, other weeks. And that's really key and simple, but very important as well. and would have no. So I suppose the key here is the word no. And remember, not is typical with the adjective, not happy, not tired, not hungry, and also the verb, I do not like chocolate, I do not want. So with the verb and the adjective, we say not. And with no, we use the substantivo, no time, no money, no energy, no food. So here it's probable and almost definite, a substantive. And that's the first clue. And if we look at the options, view, suggestion, belief, idea, they're all possible with no because they're all nouns, no problem. But in the context of the sentence, and would have no something that we had any past at all. I think the best option would be here, no idea. For example, we would have no clue, no inclination, no idea, and it just fits better in this sentence. For example, if you had no view, that would be opinion. I have no view on the matter. I have no view on the topic. The significance is I have no opinion about something. No suggestion would be that other people have not suggested anything. So there is no suggestion of changing the restrictions. There is no suggestion of changing the schedule. There is no suggestion. That means other people have said or suggested something. In this sentence, it does not really fit. And belief as well is possible. I have no belief in something, but in the context, it does not really fit here. So the best option would be no idea. Okay. At all is just really emphasis. It's stronger. I have no idea at all. It means you have completely no idea. I have no time at all. I have completely no time. So it's just more emphasis, and it's very simple, but very fluent as well. And without memory, we would have no knowledge. Okay. Again, no is the negative for the noun, no knowledge on which. So for me, the key here is the preposition on which, to something. So remember, to, it's typically the verb, to eat, to go, to drink. So if we look at the options, to base, to depend, to do, to make, four verbs. Again, do and make are very, very similar. But in this situation, it's the preposition on that's really, really the key. So this is the relative, which, to, something are present and future. So with the preposition on, it's more typical base on. Yes, absolutely possible. The story is based on a true story. The information is based on evidence. So based on is really, really typical with the preposition on. Depend is very, very typical on. I depend on you. You depend on the internet. We depend on the weather. So depend on is very, very important. So it's definitely a possibility here. Do is not really typical with on, and make is not really typical with on. So there's two possibilities: base your story on and depend on somebody. But in this situation, we have no knowledge, no information on which to base our present and to base our future. That's a very, very fluent expression. And the correct answer is to base your present, and the base is the foundation of your present and is the foundation of the future. So we have no knowledge to create the present and to create the future. A bit difficult, but definitely the correct option is 3, base. And if we continue to the next paragraph, we say memory. So this is the subject of the sentence, something of, and again, the preposition of is the key here. So what word contains of, involves of, includes of, consists of? Your decision. You need to select the correct option for you. 3 processes: registration, retention, and recall. It is necessary to read the full sentence to understand perfectly the context. And now you can try to select the correct answer. For me, contains on is not really typical. We normally say the movie contains 3 actors. The recipe contains a lot of onions. So contains is not really used with a preposition. Involves is not really used with a preposition. So making lasagna involves buying some products, mixing the products. So making lasagna involves this action. So there's no real preposition typical with the first 2. Again, includes is not really typical as well. So you go to the shop and you buy a jacket, and the jacket includes an extra hood. Okay, so again, there's no preposition really typical with includes. But with the next verb, consists, it's very, very typical with the preposition of. Okay, so the lasagna consists of meat, tomatoes, cheese, pasta. It consists of, and it's another possibility, made up of, but consists of is the very, very typical preposition. For example, the medicine consists of paracetamol, lemon. It's the content, okay? So consists of is really, really typical. The exam consists of reading, writing, listening. It's made up of reading, writing, listening. So here it's perfect. So memory consists of 3 processes. So for me, that's the best answer because of the preposition, because includes is not typical of, involves is not typical of, and contains is not typical with the preposition. So it's very clear, consists of. It's a little advanced, but the significance is the content, okay? Registration happens when we consciously notice something. Retention is the next. So I suppose the key here is the next something, next year, next day, next week, next action, possibility, next division, maybe, next set or collection, maybe, next stage, maybe. So it depends what we're thinking about. And because it's a process, there's lots of different stages, typically a different stage in a process, the first stage, second stage, third stage. And for this reason, because it's the process, I think definitely it has to be the next stage or the next step, but step is not an option. So it has to be the next stage, I think. Okay. When we keep, maintain or hold, when we keep something we have noticed, like identify or to see. So you notice something strange, you identify, you see something strange in our minds for a certain period of time. Finally, recall occurs, which is a synonym for happen, when we actively think about, preposition, think of, think about. Some of these things, remember the difference, this, that, these, and those, very important, that are something in our minds. So it's the relative pronoun, the verb to be, and in our minds. So the sentence about some of these things that are seated in our minds, maybe stocked in our minds, stored in our minds, cited in our minds. So seated will be typical in the cinema. My friends are seated in the front row. My friend is seated in the back position. So it's the location of the seat. It is flexible. You can maybe use it in other situations, but in this context, I think it's only for physical positions seated. For example, you can have deep-seated emotions, which means the emotions are positioned deep in you. Deep-seated anger is the significance that you have very, very deep sensations of anger. Stocked is very typical with the shop. So the shop is well stocked. That means it has a lot of products, it has a lot of material, it's well stocked. So in this situation, stocked in our minds is understandable, but not perfect. So it will be stocked in your mind. The significance is kept in your mind, maintained in your mind, but stocked is typical for the shop or the house. In the fridge is stocked with a lot of food. The fridge is stocked with a lot of material. That means you have a lot of products in your fridge. Stored is very typical in the shed. So in the room, in the house, you store a lot of things. In the attic, in the house, you store a lot of things. And on your memory, on the telephone, you can store a lot of items, a lot of things. And also on the computer, you can store a lot of things. But it is very, very typical in your mind. You can store a lot of things in your mind. And the significance is to keep or to save a lot of things in your mind. So for this reason, the best answer is stored. The best way to be good with these exercises is to read. You need to read regularly. You need to read magazines, books, newspapers, lots of different topics, lots of different areas is the best way to be very, very good at this exercise use of English. And for this reason, store in your mind is a very, very typical connection that we see frequently in books, in magazines all the time, okay? Cited is not really possible. We do not use that word much in English. There is another word with the C, like a citation in the magazine, a citation in the book, but it's very, very different significance, okay? Because the site is like the place, construction site, and in this situation, it does not fit very well. So definitely, because it's the mind, we would say stored in the mind like memory, okay? The final paragraph, every day we are subjected to. That's very, very fluent vocabulary. It means you experience, you have to see, you have to experience, but you maybe have no choice. So today we are subjected to bad weather. we have to endure, we have to tolerate the bad weather. So here we are subjected to a vast something of information. So the context is information and the clue is vast, a vast level of information, a vast amount of information, a vast extent of information, a vast number of information. Very interesting, because they could be very understandable, most of them. But for example, vast number would be for a vast number of people, a vast number of televisions. For countable, it's very typical, a vast number, because you can count. But information is not possible to count. It's uncountable. So it's very, very strange to say a vast number of information. No, because information is not countable. So vast number would be only for countable things, number of times, number of days, number of weeks. And for this reason, I think number is not possible. Extent is very typical. I agree with you to a certain extent. I agree with you to a large extent. And the significance is I agree with you a little, I agree with you a lot. Okay, so to a large extent, to a small extent, to a great extent, to a vast extent, it is possible. But as I said, the context is more to agree. I agree with you to a vast extent. And that's maybe formal, and it means I agree with you a lot. Okay, but in this situation, in relation to information, a vast extent of information is definitely not typical. It's not common in magazines. It's not common when you read. And for this reason, I would cancel, I would eliminate extent. Amount, absolutely, it's very, very typical in information. We have a lot of information, a big amount of information, a big amount of uncountable time, a big amount of time, amount of energy, amount of food, amount of money. So for uncountable, it's very, very typical amount. And I think that's the key for number 7. It depends on countable and uncountable. Uncountable, we would say a big number of, countable, we'd say a big number of days, a big number of weeks, but uncountable, we would say a large amount of information, a large amount of money, a large amount of chocolate. So that's the real lesson and the big importance for number 7. Again, conditional. If we remembered in the past every exact thing, so the key word here is thing, exact thing, every single thing, every one thing, every isolated thing. Maybe the 4 are possible in different situations. Every one thing is really emphasis. If you remember every one thing, it's possible. Every isolated thing would be the thing is definitely isolated. So it depends on the context. But the most fluent and the very, very typical English expression is every single. Okay, every single day, every single person, every single week. The emphasis is on every, but it really just emphasizes every. It's very, very common. Every single day I have to work. Every single day I have to make the dinner. Every single day I like to contact my friend. And it means absolutely every day. Okay, so it's really, really famous. Every single time, every single week. So it's really good. And I think that fits the best here for sure. Okay, so every single thing we had ever seen or heard would be impossible. Consequently, our brains have learned. So that's the present perfect. Have learned. It started in the past, it's finished, but it continues to be relevant to the present to register only what is of importance. Okay, so only 3 paragraphs, 8 options. And just to show you the official answers, you can see here, and I'm going to show you, I think we have the answers here at the bottom, but I need to make it a bit bigger. So I'm just going to clear this text, and I need to press this button here to show you the answers. So number 1 is B, aware of. Number 2 is D, which was no idea. Number 3 is A, which is base on which to base. Number 4 is D, which is consist of. Number 5 is D, this next stage in the process. Number 6 is C, stored. The information is stored in your mind. And number 7 is B, a large amount of information. And number 8 is B, every single day and every single person. So very, very interesting exercise, very short, but this is typical, very, very typical for the Cambridge exams use of English. So to remind you, the Cambridge exams, first certificate, Cambridge first certificate, Cambridge advanced, Cambridge proficiency. There are 3 very, very popular exams. And in the exam, you have writing, you have 2 parts of the writing, you have listening, 4 parts of the listening, you have speaking, 4 parts of the speaking, you have reading, and use of English together. Use of English, you have 4 exercises, and this is just one part of the use of English. Also, you have 3 readings in the first certificate. So there's 4 use of English and 3 readings, and it's the same paper. You do not have a lot of time in the exam. I think approximately 1 hour and 15 minutes for 7 parts. So that's approximately 10, 11 minutes on average for each part. So for this exercise in the exam, you only really have 10, 11 minutes to try it. Okay. Every week on Saturday, we have a webinar dedicated to the B2 first certificate exam. So on Saturday at 1 o'clock, we have webinars, a class with this type of material. And we have a lot of people that want to come and join and attend these webinars. It's only for €2.90, and that's possible on Saturday at 1 o'clock every week to focus on the Cambridge exam. So I hope you enjoyed the exercise. Very, very interesting. I will continue to show more material, but remember, this is just one exercise from the level B2. I hope you enjoy. Thank you for watching, and please stay in contact and leave a comment if you wish. Thank you so much, and talk to you soon. Bye-bye.